Hi everyone, welcome back to Onyx Pages. I'm Jerry, this is Chimmy, and we are hanging out again in front of the Madison Area Technical College. And I said Chimmy, and it's Chimmy,
yes.
It's not Chimmy, okay. I'm very nervous because we actually just met, and I want to make sure that I get her name right. So I first heard about you at the People of Color dinner. Because Chimmy is going to be the managing editor of Uncanny magazine. And has that started yet?
No, that starts November, December, and then into January officially.
Okay, so not yet, but you're going to be moving into that role. And the current managing editor of Uncanny has been doing it for about 5 years?
Yes,
is that it?
Since the very beginning.
Okay, so this is a big deal. And I was obviously very excited because I'm like, Black woman doing things in science fiction and fantasy, and I actually don't know that much about Uncanny magazine, but I will now because I'm inspired. So I thought it would be awesome to just hear a little bit about Chimmy, about her work, and about a short story that recently got critical acclaim and longlisted for the Nommo awards called Toothful Things.
Toothsome Things.
Toothsome Things. I kept on calling it Toothful Things, and I actually just read it, and I'm still digesting it. I really enjoyed it. It's dense and it's beautiful, and I'll include a link to the short story in the description box of the video. So I'm gonna stop talking, and Chimmy's gonna start talking because she's awesome. But I will ask questions. So first of all, hi.
Hello.
Thank you for doing this.
Thanks for having me.
Can you tell me a little bit about, like, how would you describe yourself as a I'll just say a literary artist? Like,
as a literary artist?
Yeah, how would you describe yourself?
Okay, primarily I'm an editor and writer. I've been editing with Uncanny, first as their editorial intern, and then assistant editor, and then later managing editor since last February or so it's been about a year and a half.
Okay.
So that's my editing practice, and then in terms of being a writer, I've published just the one short story in Strange Horizons. I'm a very slow writer of primarily fantasy and horror adjacent work, so that's my interest there. And I also do some poetry on the more literary fiction side, so to speak.
So I have a bunch of follow-up questions. First of all, what is Uncanny magazine?
What is Uncanny magazine? Well, it's my favorite magazine, of course. But essentially we publish short fiction and essays and poetry, all of which are essentially designed to make you feel things, make you think things. It's a high degree of emotionality combined with very high craft. So yeah, we publish fantasy and science fiction mostly, and that's us.
Cool. And so is it limited to science fiction and fantasy?
Yes.
Okay. And if folks on Booktube want to read it and find out about it, how would they do that?
You just go to uncannymagazine.com. You can find basically all the issues online for free. You can also subscribe.
Which we want you to do.
Yeah.
Because, like, pay for things.
You get to support the creators, you get to support the magazine, support me, and you also get a chance to, you get, like, additional things. Like, you get issues early if you subscribe as well. But if you're not able to do that, you're definitely able to just go online, uncannymagazine.com, and go through our very illustrious backlist.
Okay. So let's talk about Toothsome Things. So it gave me... I want to tell you how I responded to it, and then I'm going to ask you what your intentions were, and maybe those things will align. But I'm really into fairy tale retellings.
Oh yeah.
And I don't read a lot of them, but I really like them.
Yeah.
I like them because they allow me to sort of revisit stories from my childhood, usually from the lens of an adult.
Yeah.
And I get to sort of turn corners that weren't really explored in the original works and re-engage them, right?
Yeah.
And so Toothsome Things to me feels like a bit of a mashup of kind of a Little Red Riding Hood retelling from a very different perspective. I also kind of felt a little bit of like Snow White somewhere in there as well. but also this sense of collective voice came up for me, and that's kind of what I was left with. I definitely want to read it again. The illustrations in the story are really gorgeous and really helpful too, in terms of directing the reader's thinking. So I really loved it.
Thank you.
What was your intention, and how would you describe the story yourself?
So for me, it was a bit related to the Me Too movement. I was really, really upset, just really angry a lot of the time, especially when I was starting. Just in terms of who gets to be believed by people and who doesn't. And a huge subset of like who gets to be believed, or who isn't rather, is women. Or not necessarily women, but like non-binary people, women, femmes, just people who don't fit the straight white cis male profile. Which was really upsetting to me, because like so many careers and lives and just emotions had been kind of ruined in the wake of people not having any regard for each other's humanity. So I found that, especially considering some of the sexual themes in Little Red Riding Hood, and then some of the women are jealous of each other aspects of Snow White, I thought they went together really well, especially considering, so I read an article which kind of helped along the inception of Toothsome Things by Rebecca Solnit, called, it was in Harper's, and it came out actually a bit before Me Too, like 2013 or 14. It was called Cassandra Among the Creeps. So essentially the article talked about like two big myths of truth-telling versus lies and believability. We have the classic Greek myth of Cassandra, who was cursed after denying the advances, the rape essentially, of a god. So she was cursed to say things and no one would ever believe her. And versus the boy who cried wolf, who told lies and lies and lies and was constantly believed, at least until the end of his story. But I found it interesting, especially in that article, putting those two in such stark relief, that one was immediately given the benefit of the doubt, whereas one was cursed to never have the benefit of the doubt, essentially by the patriarchy. So for me, the anger was one aspect, and I just found that fairy tales do really contain a really interesting multiplicity of voices. And a lot of the times women in fairy tales, or people who don't fit a certain profile, tend to be victimized and spoken over and ignored. So I thought kind of bringing them together would work really well for the message of, like, the reason it's Me Too is it's because people are finding community in these awful things that have happened to them and gaining strength from each other, lending strength to each other. So yeah, for me it was definitely just about taking the multiplicity of fairy tales. I have an interest in mythology and including that all into one very strange, very angry, galloping along narrative. Yeah,
well, you did it.
Thank you.
Yeah, you did it, and the writing is amazing.
Oh, thanks.
I don't write myself. I shouldn't say that. I mean, I play with writing. And
so you're a writer.
I mean,
you're a writer. Claim it.
Sure, I'm a writer.
There we go.
And because I'm starting up and writing little things, I'm really growing in appreciation, for and of the craft. So I just read it. I was like, this is like it was so beautifully written. It was actually a pleasure to read. Like the way that you put words together and concepts together, sort of like just kind of rolled along. Like it was actually fun to take in the words.
Oh, thank you.
Beyond the actual images or anything like that, which was also great. But the experience of reading, because sometimes words land on you hard, and it's painful to read. It's like the reader is being punished, and it just felt great, So thank you for that. So definitely take a look at the story of Toothsome Things, and we can chat about what you think about the writing. And I will ask you, because I'm now asking everybody that I'm talking to about this. How do you feel about readers giving you sort of reverberations from your own work? I mean, Booktube, I'm not sure how familiar you are with the platform, but we review stories, we review books. If someone wants to follow up with you or let you know that they've reviewed the story or anything like that, how would you like them to engage with you if you would?
Yeah, for me, I also review books, and I feel strongly that reviews are really for readers more than writers.
Yes.
That's not to say that I don't want anyone's compliments. If you have something nice to say it to me. And if you don't, I'm not going to like trample on your right to not like my story.
Yeah.
But don't like tag me in negative things. Like I said, reviews are for readers. So
yeah,
kind of finding out like what people are looking for. Maybe Toothsome just isn't their cup of tea because it's a little hard to deal with thematically. But if you want to engage with me, like I'm on Twitter, and if you have nice things to say, you can say them. And if you have critical things, maybe I'll read them, but I won't respond to them. I don't want to be that kind of messy person.
Yeah, no, I hear you. It's something that I've been thinking about, as well, like, reviewer etiquette, right? And boundaries as well. So I'm sort of shifting my own practice on, like tagging writers, because I used to do that all the time. And then I started reading about it and being like, that might not be sort of what they want. Not so much on negative reviews, but certainly on positive ones. I was tagging on Twitter. So I'm rethinking and revisiting that. So we've talked about Uncanny, we've talked about Toothsome things, but I also just want to, first of all, acknowledge something that I think is really brilliant, which is that your first published short story was longlisted for the Nommo, right?
Yeah.
So congratulations.
Thank you.
And can you tell us a little bit about what the Nommo is?
Yes.
And because this is a really big deal.
Yeah.
in our community, in the literary community, and for your first short story that you published to be longlisted, like it takes years for people to get longlisted to this award, and you just like literally, it's so funny because you landed on your feet and you hit the ground running.
Yeah.
And I think that's really amazing. So can you talk a little bit about that
Nommo.
experience and the Nommo?
For sure. So basically, Nommo Award, it's for African science fiction and fantasy. You have to have some connection to the continent. So for me, I'm Nigerian through my parents. I mean, my name is Chimedum Ohaegbu. There's a reason for that. It's not an accident. So you have to be of African descent, or an African living in Africa, or an African of the diaspora. And yeah, writing in science fiction and fantasy. So it's essentially Africa's answer to the Hugo Award. And I think it's really great. It was such an exciting long list. Like, I had a few friends on there, and also I saw like Nnedi Okorafor was there, Akwaeze Amezi was there, which was incredible. Not for short story, for novel, for Freshwater. But I was just really excited to be on such a great list, especially considering like the talent in the African science fiction and fantasy community. We're doing really well, and I'm super excited to be a part of that, especially with the first one. I was so honored and surprised, and I'm just glad to be there.
Yeah, and you're right, like it's there is so much amazing writing coming from the continent, but also the diaspora. Diasporas, and it's last year was such a great year for African science fiction and fantasy, for sure. Freshwater was incredible.
Yes.
What was Nnedi Okorafor on there for?
She was on for, she wrote a short story called Mother of Invention. Yes.
Okay.
It's about a woman in Nigeria in her smart house, and she's dealing like with the fallout of her marriage. It's a fun story. It's emotional, but also funny at times, and it feels close to like 20 minutes into the future. This could happen.
Right. Gotcha. So that's really cool. So as my last question, you know, actually I have two questions.
Yeah.
The first is, so I tend to read SFF writing by queer Black folks.
Yeah.
And I'm always open to recommendations of who to read. So I'm curious as to who you might recommend, since you know you're in the belly of the beast, as they say. So who would you recommend to me or for folks on BookTube who want to read more diversely but more specifically writing coming from Africa?
Okay, so we talked about Freshwater.
Yes.
Freshwater is probably my favorite novel recently. I find their style was something I really want to emulate. And it's just a beautiful novel. I related a lot.
Yeah.
So Freshwater by Ekwaeke Amezi. Rivers Solomon is fantastic with An Unkindness of Ghosts.
Yeah, that was awesome.
Yeah, I don't often go in for like space opera type novels, but that like really gripped me. The characters were so well fleshed out. Like they were so beyond any trope or one-dimensional painting that they could have been, and I thought that was extremely cool. Stephanie Malia Morris for short fiction. She writes like, I'd say horror adjacent, that sort of thing. Who else? Innocent Chizaram Ilo. He's a short fiction writer from Nigeria. He was on the Nommo long list as well.
Oh, cool.
Yeah, and he's had things in Strange Horizons, so that's a good place to look at. Actually, Strange Horizons just had a Nigerian science fiction and fantasy special issue.
Oh my god.
So, packed full of Nigerian writers.
You want to check it. Sonoria is a Nigerian booktuber.
Oh, nice.
I'll show you her channel. She's amazing. She's like brilliant, and she's beautiful, and she's salty, and she's well read. She's just like perfect.
Nice. Okay, yes, I would love to see that channel.
Yes.
Getting ready to see. But yeah, so the Strange Horizons special issue in Nigerian sci-fi and fantasy has been really good. I'm still reading through it. There's a lot, which is great, and I highly recommend it. I got a few of my favorites.
Good. Yeah, that's good. Thank you. And what's next for you? We know Uncanny is like going to be your life for a little bit, but in terms of your writing, what's next that you'd like us to know about? Are you going to be writing another piece anytime soon? Do you have ideas that you're willing to tease us with a little bit?
I'm working on a few things. I'm a very slow writer, so I wouldn't anticipate a story from me for several months. But I'm working on things, just basically things that I guess are more in the weird fiction / horror genre, so to speak. Working on improving my editing and learning a bunch from Michi Trota, the managing editor currently, as we transition into the new year. And I just want to try and read a bit more widely as well. Especially in terms of regards to like Nigerian sci-fi and fantasy, but also just Black sci-fi, fantasy, horror overall.
So like Onyx Pages is here for you.
Yeah. Excited for that. And I forgot one recommendation. Young Nigerian writer, his name is Osahan Ize-Iyamu, I believe. Very prolific.
Okay.
So, and also in the Strange Horizons Nigerian special issue, as well as on the Nommo long list. So you can look at all these people. But yeah, I want to widen my reading, take a look at more Onyx Pages, finish a story eventually, and focus on learning as much as I can about editing, improving my editorial voice, just so I can serve Uncanny and the writers that come to it as well as possible.
Well, thank you. You're brilliant. You're awesome. You've got a big fan.
Oh.
And now you have like BookTube holding you up, lifting you up.
Yeah.
So I appreciate your time.
Yeah, no, thank you for this interview. I had a lot of fun.
Good. And so yeah, she's awesome. You should like follow her stuff. And thank you very much for watching this video. I will see you in the next one. Bye.
Bye-bye.